My name is Michaela Reid. I'm with CohnReznick, here with Aisha and David from FlowerHire. Um, Earlier this year, you guys did a top 10 predictions of the cannabis market and industry. It's 6 months into the year, and it would be a great time to just do a recheck in, see where we're landing. So I'll go through the top 10, and then we'll see if you guys are CannaYes, we're on par, CannaNo, we're kind of not on par, or is it a bit hazy? Number one, cultivation is still the number one job creator in all of cannabis.
CannaYes.
Nice.
Cultivation is still the number one job creator in all of cannabis. What I mean by that, I think when people think about jobs in cannabis, they tend to think retail. Just like the face of what it means to work in cannabis that most people come across as working in cannabis. That being said, cannabis in every state starts with a supply chain that originates with happy plants in the ground. Yep. So there are more people across the country working in cannabis production roles and production facilities than in retail stores. So I say CannaYes.
All right. Number two, there will still be a migration of talent. What do we got? CannaYes. CannaYes. Nice.
Yes, this definitely still holds true. And, last year we did make that prediction that there would be this talent migration from the West Coast to the East Coast. And we definitely have been seeing that. I think the difference is, where those people are migrating to. You're seeing states that are recently launching those adult use programs. So New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, the East Coast in general, you're seeing a lot more people wanting to move there. And then even more recently, if you look at the South, the Southeast, so Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, they're experiencing a lot of growth too. So, they have need for people with real cannabis experience, and that means you have to import talent.
All right. Number three, New York will be a game changer. CannaYes, CannaNo.
Oh, it's a bit hazy, Michaela. It's a bit hazy. No, I'll tell you what, I really want to say this, because at the end of the day, legal cannabis in New York is a game changer for so many reasons. Yep. I just spent some time out there a few weeks ago, and I spoke to, the Card Coalition here in the last week, Brittany and Jason, the founders there, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to see that industry develop and have momentum. There's not enough retail stores open. There's just not enough access to capital as promised to the winners of the card application process. But at the end of the day, cannabis in New York and the fiscal center of the world and the cultural heartbeat of America, it's going to have ramifications. It's just taking time, like anything does in cannabis. It's just going to take, time for it to really have that effect. So it's a slow burn.
All right. Number four, more innovative social equity programs. Bit hazy. Okay.
It's a bit hazy. I think. Yeah, I think all of us would like to see, more concrete movement and more impact when it comes to that type of work. And you kind of have to break it up into two, segments when you talk about social equity programs in the industry. One being, you think about the MSO model, these big corporate cannabis bodies that are now creating ESG departments or social impact departments, these divisions that are specifically focused on this work. And that's great. Do we see enough big companies doing that to scale? Not quite yet, but it's happening. So that's one thing. On the other hand, you've got this idea of the license holder piece. Dave mentioned earlier, this difference about access to capital is still a big kind of question mark. And, there's a lot of states putting out these social equity license programs, but until the people who are applying have that real access to capital, it's really difficult for them to get a license. And every state is tackling this in their own way, as is everything in cannabis. But it's a challenge, but everyone's working on it. And I've talked to several people doing this work in this space, and we've got the best and the brightest working hard to make it happen. But it's a long road.
More recruiting of candidates with cannabis industry experience. What do we got?
Whoa,
CannaYes.
Recruiting. Yeah, so we already spoke about production candidates being relocated, right? If you think about the legal cannabis industry, there's 400 and some odd thousand people working for recreational medical cannabis companies, right? If you go back 5 years ago, there was, less than 200,000, right? And so what I mean by this question is, for the first time, often as a service provider, companies look at FlowerHire to find management, and executive level talent. It is possible to actually hire folks for almost any skill set that worked professionally in cannabis before. Retail leaders that have worked for traditional retail and have 2 or 3 years of cannabis experience, down to folks in the finance and accounting lanes and the other parts of manufacturing and supply chain. So yes, not that it's the right strategy, and we still fill positions as a service provider with more first-time sort of cannabis employees than folks that have already come to the industry, but there's definitely more opportunity to hire folks that have a playbook for how to perform their job function in a cannabis company already and don't need as much training.
Number 6, cannabis is still a force for upward mobility. CannaYes.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is a CannaYes for sure, especially in emerging markets. Because there's so much growth there. There are so many new companies opening up and new companies kind of building out at this like exponential rate. So, is it a force for upward mobility? Yeah, maybe not on your first entry point into cannabis, but once you're in, if you show what you're doing, if you are data driven, all these things that we're talking about, if you really are bringing value to your team, I mean, I've seen it hundreds of times. People are really rising up the ranks of these companies because of the impact that they're able to give. And you don't see that type of, velocity in terms of career development in other industries.
Number 7, the rise of glue positions. What are we thinking? Still CannaYes?
That is definitely a CannaYes position. So let me talk about glue positions for a second, right? Yeah. In a cannabis company, especially if it's vertically integrated, there is a make side and there is a sell side, right? And what happens often is that those are 2 completely different silos. And often when things aren't going right, what happens is there's the blame game. Not to mention that for a cannabis company, you have this whole sort of back office function, finance, accounting, thinking about taxes, thinking about compliance, thinking about human resources management. And those 3, they're silos. So glue positions exist to provide more data-driven decision-making in order to unlock companies' growth and potential and understand what's really going on, so that companies that have traditionally been in silos can make data-driven decision and understand what's actually happening and get things done. So you see roles like this evolve in like the accounting function, especially about costing and inventory planning as it relates to retail, in finance and financial analysis and modeling. Those type of sort of glue positions that tie it all in together to provide reporting and data analytics and infrastructure for a company to understand what's actually happening and what they need to do in order to run a profitable business and make sure that they keep the wheels on the tracks.
All right. Number 8, compensation is more on par with other industries. CannaYes.
The short answer to that is, if you look back 3 or 4 years ago, as cannabis companies were just starting to hire en masse across the country, there was so much excitement to get in. Everyone wanted to get on the ground level. Everyone was so excited to be part of this new and exciting thing. And, with that in mind, and because it was startup, many people took a pay cut to get into this industry, myself included. It's like they knew that this was going to be a new chapter in their career. So a lot of people came into the industry with the mindset that they would take a step back in order to propel forward. Fast forward to today, what we're seeing is those people who did take the leap, they have now, going back to upward mobility, they have now been promoted up and up. And the people who are now making their first pivot into the industry, you are seeing salary and comp levels that are very much on par with the rest of the job market. So it's, there's been a leveling up. There's been a little bit more consistency across that. I'm not saying that people are getting these crazy astronomical raises, but they're definitely, the industry is catching up with the job market in general when it comes to total rewards. And can I add one more thing? I think also like a group that we have to make sure we're mentioning is look at the members of the legacy industry, right? Like before legal cannabis, their options for, transitioning into kind of the traditional workforce were super limited. And now we're seeing so many stories of legacy industry people who now have a legal cannabis job and are making, real serious money because they're the leaders of expertise in their businesses. And, that would not have been possible without, the way that the industry has been going. So, people have the opportunity to believe in the work that they do and, really build their unique path to success. They don't have to follow some traditional path that, we've all been told growing up.
Number 9, improved human capital solutions. Bit hazy.
The way I see it is improved human capital solutions is hazy because yes, you're seeing better technology, better service providers that we now in the cannabis industries have access to. What's making it hazy is that, unfortunately, you do see still these big name marquee providers that used to service us that are no longer doing so. So, there's kind of that like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of progress on this. That's why I think it's hazy, but I'm open to hear your thoughts, Dave.
You're right, Aisha. As much, historically for a licensed cannabis company that's just trying to pay their people to actually have direct deposit, they have to pay 5-10 times as much as what, an ADP would charge like a traditional customer, right? That's not right. The good thing is, yes, there are actually marquee tier 1 providers that provide a payroll service or even a PEO service that are supporting cannabis industry clients at rates that are much more competitive, that have better technology and service that was available even 12 months ago. That being said, Aisha is right because it is a bit hazy because a couple major providers did drop cannabis payroll recently, right? But still, there's at least progress in general for a company's ability to have options that aren't, trying to gouge from a standpoint of the cost of the service.
And number 10, the HR maturity in maturing markets will increase. What do we think?
I'm going to go big CannaYes on that one. And so there's a lot of words there, a lot of, it could have been probably labeled better, but as a company evolves, as a business evolves in any industry, you start in the startup phase. The startup phase is really about like compliance as it relates to an HR function. But over the course of time, as a company goes through growth phase and maybe more maturity, where they're generating revenue, but now it's about profitability, holding market share, and it's not about 40% growth, it's about 5 to 10% growth. That happens in any sort of type of business. So when I think about HR maturity relates to cannabis, it's designing, like bonus and retention strategies using data that match company performance to an individual's metrics in order to unlock performance, right? It's those type of systems, it's those type of programs that are starting to be put in place across the industry. And when I think maturing markets, I do think consolidation, right? A lot of struggle in places like California for operators that have been really trying hard for a long time. California cannabis isn't going anywhere. The revenue is still there. The revenue is likely going to continue to eke forward in the legal market, right? So what that means is you're talking bigger companies, and bigger companies, there's negatives to that in terms of like craft cannabis is what it should be, and harder to compete, with folks that can raise lots of money. Those are unfortunate things. But as it relates to HR and human capital, larger companies mean that they actually have HR department and processes that are mature to where, they have, and there's opportunity in those larger companies to really unlock the potential of cannabis as a career by way of, this industry should be the best industry to work for. It's coming of age right now, 2023, in a post-pandemic world. The society's fundamentally changed. How does cannabis show the way of like how people enjoy the work that they do every day and find that alignment and make a living to support themselves and their family, right? And so bigger companies in cannabis in these maturing markets do allow that process to continue to move forward, but obviously long way to go. Long way to go.
But still a CannaYes. Still definitely a CannaYes. It's kind of the way I think about it is, these mature markets are in a great place because these companies are now ready to make transition from surviving to thriving, right? So as opposed to it just being like, oh, we got to keep the lights on and we have to make sure that we're going to be open tomorrow. They now have the security and the resources to, as Dave said, build out processes and functions to really cultivate their talent, cultivate their organization, whether it be through employee resource groups that we talked about earlier, or developmental and educational programs, and all of these other HR, that whole ecosystem. It gets better and better, so your team can be stronger and stronger. So it's definitely good news that we're seeing.
Ooh. Cultivate your talent. I like the weed.
I know. I didn't even mean to say it.
Way to go.
Was it cheesy?
No. We love weed job puns any day.
Well, looking forward to the next 6 months. We'll see where we end up. I appreciate you guys coming in and giving us a good update. I think it was a great conversation. Lots of things to come.
Michaela, thanks for having us.